The crew members at Raising Cane's only cook to order, which means they don't cook your food until you order it, for the freshest possible chicken fingers, fries, and toast. Be a back-to-school hero with Raising Cane's.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
Sometimes we need to slow down and remember the simple pleasures in life. Good coffee, good books, and good company. Come on in. Take a seat. The coffee's just been brewed. Let's see who we have in the coffee shop today. Another gorgeous day in the coffee shop. Now, I want to talk books and writing. Who has books on the table? Let's take a look around. Guy Donovan, you've got 3 books sitting here. The Forgotten Princess of Mona's on top.
Excellent. Glad to hear that.
How you doing there, Guy?
I'm doing just fine, Jesse. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, this book has your name on it.
For better or for worse.
Why don't you tell me a little... So I'm guessing because there's 3 of them stacked up here, it's part of a series. So why don't
you are correct.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about both the book and the series?
All right, I'd be happy to. The series is called The Dragon's Treasure, and the first book that you have on top there is The Forgotten Princess of Mona. Basically, what The Dragon's Treasure tells is the story of a young girl in 5th century Wales. She happens to be a princess of a post-Roman kingdom by the name of Mona, which is taken from history. The island of Anglesey, which is actually 2 islands in the Hibernian Sea to the west side of North Wales, is paired with the island of Holy Island. Between the 2 of them, in 5th century post-Roman Britannia, they made up the kingdom of Mona. Well, my lead character, Princess Caris, is the princess of that island kingdom, but she was born simple-minded. To put it in the terms of the day, one of the politer of the terms of the day, of course. Another would be moron or addle-brained or whatever. But because she's a princess, people refer to her as simple-minded. Today, we would know it more as autism. Well, her mother and father are both dead. Well, her mother died giving birth to her. Her father disappeared when she was only 10. The book begins with her at 11, 1 year after her father's disappearance. Her father, after the death of her mother, was forced by the High King Vortigern, another historical figure from the time in Britannia shortly after the Romans left to go back to the mainland of Europe. He was forced to remarry another woman who is now the queen of the kingdom. She doesn't really care too much about Caris, so she's sort of shuffled off to the side because she's useless to her. And she basically lives with her tutor, who was her father's advisor when he was king. And they both generally just live a life of forgotten nothingness in the royal manor, while the new queen goes about her business with her son, who will one day be king of Mona in place of Caris. That's pretty much the start of it. That would make a pretty boring story. So at one point, Caris discovers, while she's out in the countryside with her tutor, whose name is Domelk, she discovers a little cave, and in that cave is a creature that, let's face it, it's called the Dragon's Treasure. We know we're going to find out it's a dragon, but no one knows that at first. But the effect of that creature on her begins to change her mentality and bring her around more to normal in a very painful process, but becoming more normal makes her a threat to that new queen's perception of what's going to happen with her son. So that's pretty much the beginning of the series there.
Wow, sounds fascinating. And you said the genre for this was epic historical fantasy?
Yes, I went through lots of hoops about researching the history of the period, which is early medieval, but it's right after antiquity, in which the Romans were running Britannia. Everybody's heard of Hadrian's Wall, keeping the Picts back in Scotland, and the Romans in the south. This is after that. The Romans left in 410 AD. And my story picks up in the late 430s and continues into the 440s throughout the 4 books of the series. So it's in a period right after the Romans have left, and there's a certain amount of chaos involved in who runs things. But there was a high king of Britannia who was sort of a last Roman governor in a way. His name was Vortigern, and he is, in history, a predecessor to Uther Pendragon, who everyone's heard of, I believe.
That sounds fascinating.
So yeah, there's history involved, but it's all background. The story involves my character, who has this small little niche in one far-flung corner of this much larger pre-Arthurian story that's playing out in Greater Britannia.
Wow. So what was the hardest thing you had to research?
Oh, the genealogy of who was running what kingdoms were where, what foods did they eat, what kind of clothes did they wear. Everybody thinks of Romans and they think of togas, but of course togas aren't what anybody thinks of in terms of the medieval era, even the very early medieval era. It was just a ton of, what kind of shoes did they wear? What did they eat? A funny little anecdote is that I got all the way through like my 5th draft or more in that first book, Forgotten Princess of Mona, before another author friend of mine over in Britain happened to mention to me, hey, by the way, no potatoes. Those came from the New World. Yeah, well, who'd have thunk?
Wow. So it's those kind of details that actually I think make a book more fascinating.
Well, I tend to agree. I tried to get as much of it right as I could. Now, one of the benefits of writing in that era, writing a story set in that era, is that, well, it's good and bad, because it's bad in that there's so little information recorded about some of these little details. But for a storyteller, that's actually a very good thing, because it gives me an enormous amount of wiggle room to kind of tell my own story. And as long as I don't break too many realities, like the potato issue, which I had to turn all my potatoes into turnips. But as long as I don't break too many of those actual things that we do know, it gives me a huge amount of wiggle room to kind of make up my own stuff.
Gotta ask, how do you research dragons?
Well, that's as much personal preference as anything else, I think. I mean, every ethnicity, every race, every nationality on the earth has a dragon in their history. If you go back far enough, it's like the flood. Everybody's religion has a flood in it. Basically, it allowed me to kind of pick and choose. Clearly, the Asian dragons were not going to show up in a story set in 5th century Wales, which was not even Wales at the time, of course. But I fudged things a little bit to use Welsh names and Welsh language in some places. Basically, what I did is I just went with the dragons that I like. And I have always preferred a wyvern over a traditional dragon. Now, you might ask, what's the difference between the two? A traditional dragon is 4 legs and the 2 wings. A wyvern is 2 wings and 2 rear legs. If you're watching stuff like Game of Thrones and the Hobbit movies, those are wyverns, you'll notice, as opposed to a true dragon. Other than that, I took from a lot of different places. As a kid, one of my absolute favorite series to read was Anne McCaffrey's The Dragon Riders of Pern. Not giving away too much with the story to say that the thing about my dragon that cures Karis's autism and gets her out of that mental prison that she's in and allows her to speak and associate with people, is a telepathic link, which, well, yeah, mea culpa. I stole that from Anne McCaffrey. Her dragons are telepathic, so is mine. And it's that telepathic link that helps to mold Karis and fix what's wrong with her, so that she can then basically associate with people better and actually be a main character rather than just this kind of character that's marginalized and pushed off to the side, and you only know what's going on in her head. So it was a lot of Anne McCaffrey, a little more of Anne's dragons builds throughout the series when the dragon Karis meets in Forgotten Princess learns how to make fire. I'll leave that where it is for now.
How long did it take you to write The Forgotten Princess?
Oh, I think I started it in 2009, just out of sheer desperation. I came from a creative background from when my decade in Los Angeles as an anime. When that business kind of pooped out and I had to go do something else, had to find a day job, keep the wife and family under a roof, I got the most uncreative job you could possibly imagine, and I was going out of my mind. My wife recommended to me to pick up writing. And she had written something herself. She's a very creative person, that she wrote as a direct-to-video Barbie movie. And that, of course, didn't sell. She said, well, why don't you take that and make something of it? So in 2009, that's what I started. And I didn't actually publish the thing through Amazon until July of 2013. So basically about 4 years.
Were the second books a little faster to write than the first?
Oh, absolutely. And they're large books. Don't get me wrong. I had originally envisioned this concept of mine, telling the story of this little girl who overcomes this problem, and through overcoming that problem gets involved in a whole bunch of other problems, and leading to the resolution years later. Was originally supposed to have been, in my concept, maybe one large novel. And I got so into it, and the story spun so far out of what I'd originally anticipated that it became essentially 4 novels. That first one took forever, but the second and third and fourth were written over a period of about 2 years, I want to say. And then, of course, it's just dragged out a little bit for editorial.
Well, congratulations for doing your editing, and I think it's a great thing that you take the time and actually edit it. Now, do you use a professional editor or critique partners, or how do you edit your work?
Well, the problem with editorial, when you're outsourcing to editorial, is there are a ton of people out there who would gladly charge you upwards of $30,000 to edit a large book or a large series like mine are. I just don't have that kind of available cash. What I do use is I have, for smaller projects, I have an editor that I do outsource to, and I happily pay the money, because I do believe in having other eyes looking at my work. I am capable of self-editing. We're all capable of self-editing, but we're so close to the story that we are not our best editors. Because of cash, in the real world, the cash flow situation is such that I can't afford the kind of money that a professional publishing house would put into editorial. But I need those other eyes. So what I've got is a team of beta readers that when I've got it pretty close to what I want and I've edited as best I can on my own, I'll send it out to my beta readers and have them look at it and come back and tell me everything that is or isn't working. A lot of the time they'll point out the smaller issues, like you missed a comma here, missed a comma there, improper use of a semicolon, and that's very valuable. It's the kind of thing that I am pretty capable of handling myself. But what I'm really looking for from my beta readers is this flowing right? Does this make sense? Have I missed something? And they've been very good about it. I've got about 5 or 6. And they give me a very good response to that stuff. And then I'll go back and I'll match to their notes. Where they disagree, it's kind of up to me. And in the end, it is my story. So I have to sometimes judge, just like you would with an editor. Yeah, that might be right, but this is really how I want it. And that's my call. And that's where if people do or don't like the book, that's got to fall on me. I'm the author, not my I can't blame that on my betas or my editor that I do use for my shorter works. So complicated answer to a very simple question. Sometimes I use an actual editor, and other times I go through betas and my own self-editing. I hope that makes some sense.
Actually, it makes all the sense in the world. And as a reader, and just to remind all the listeners, I'm not a writer. No. I feel like I'm on an island surrounded by writers going, right. I've tried. It doesn't work for me, kids. It won't happen. Get a grip. But as a reader, I can always tell when something's been well edited. And I actually do serve as beta reader for a few friends who are writers. So I know what it's like to go through that pre-published work and find the plot holes. It could be as simple as the pizza box was open. 6 pages later, it's closed. But this pizza box is actually something we need to keep track of. So how did the lid get closed? Or, you never told me she had a gun. Where did she get the gun from? Or, what do you mean she's magic? I'm 17 chapters into this and now you're bringing out magical abilities? Wait a minute.
Yeah, the last thing you want is to go all the way to publication and start getting feedback in the form of bad reviews about how many things you missed or how many things that you did that were confusing. You can't please everybody. I have to face that fact. Everybody gets bad reviews. Hopefully everybody gets good reviews as well, but one thing's for certain, everybody gets bad ones. It can't be helped. You can't please everybody, but the more work you put into it, the more sure you are that at least if they don't like it, it's because they just don't like your style of writing or maybe the concept behind the book, not because you're a terrible writer who confused them.
Exactly. And no offense, bringing up magical powers in chapter 17 when we haven't seen magical powers all story is confusing. So, where did you get the gorgeous cover?
Well, I referenced being in the animation industry for 10 years. That was all me. That is my daughter, who was 10 at the time. No, I'm sorry. She wasn't 10 at the time. She was 9, I think. Standing on top of a hill I should say it's my daughter who's 9 wearing a Hannah Montana wig, because my daughter's hair is long, very straight, and very dark brown. She's wearing a Hannah Montana wig and a dress standing on top of a hilltop in North Dakota, of all places. What I did is I photoshopped behind her the Menai Strait, which is the stretch of water that separates the island of Anglesey in Great Britain from the northwest coast of Wales. Put it through a whole bunch of filters, played with it a lot, changed some colors, and there you go. Took out some telephone poles and some wires and stuff, and there you go. My 10 years in the animation business doing professional art at least taught me how to do a book cover.
Well, I will say in most cases I say authors should never do their own book covers. You fit the exception to the rule. You have the background and experience.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It was a risk. Again, it's like editorial. We're not our best critics. We're really not. But the money situation came down to $500 for somebody else, and hopefully I like it, or I am an artist myself. I know what I want. I know composition. I gave it a whack, and so far I've gotten pretty good feedback from the covers, particularly Forgotten Princess of Mona and the second book, A Cold White Home. But all of the covers so far I've done myself.
Well, I'm going to have to say break the rules and do it yourself, because they're gorgeous covers.
Well, thank you. That's nice to hear.
It's one of those things. Most writers, and even myself, as a radio show host, I needed a show graphic. I draw stick figures. Now, thankfully, my show graphic for my main show was a photograph that just needed a border and some wording, so that was doable. But my show for Coffee Shop, that a little bit harder to get my head around. In fact, we went through a couple iterations of that image.
Yeah, I went through quite a few different versions of a particularly Forgotten Princess of Mona because it's the first in the series. It sets the tone for the remainder of the series. And in my other books, I follow a similar design with all four, well, particularly the first three covers. The books are in order: Forgotten Princess of Mona, A Cold White Home, Songs of Autumn, and the fourth one, which is still in editorial, is going to be titled Memories So Distant and Brief. Well, A Cold White Home and Songs of Autumn follow the same general format of that first cover. But like she does in the story, Karis gets older throughout. And she's in different locations, and she dresses completely differently in at least the one case. So I had a lot of fun with that, and given the long nature that this has taken me to edit all these and get them out, it's at least every other year that each one comes out. It's almost a year, but never quite. It's always just a little over. So my copyright dates make it look like it's every other year. But the benefit of that is that my daughter is growing up along with the character. So as I get to that fourth book, she looks nothing taller, skinnier, doesn't look anything at all like she did in the first, where she's such a little child. But it's been a little bit of kismet, I guess you could say, for me.
So how has having a day job and a family affected the amount of time you have for your writing?
Affected the time or eradicated the time? Oh, my God. Well, my wife writes also. I neglected to mention that while I was an animator, my wife was a film editor. I did mention that she had originally written a very rough version of what became my version of The Dragon's Treasure. But she's a writer as well, and luckily that gives us something that on our days off, both of us are perfectly happy spending time together. We're together. We're working in our own different worlds, on our own different books and scripts and other projects, but we're together. That's our together time. So that helps a lot. As far as the more extended, the farther out the family we go, i.e. our daughter, well, let's just say we get a lot more work done during the school year when she's in school than during the summers.
I could see that being the case.
Yeah. I managed to take I work nights. I have a quote-unquote day job, but I work nights. And what that does also is I come home from my job at about 3 o'clock in the morning, our time here in Central Standard Time. Everybody else is in bed. That gives me an extra couple of hours to sit down and work on some of what I'm doing, either writing fresh or editorial, before having to go to bed, and maybe I can have breakfast with the family and then go to bed. So in an odd sort of way, having my wife working during the day and me at night, while it does for anybody, it take writing out of it completely. For anybody, that makes a family life really hard. But because I have that time in the morning, at least it's a little something. So it impacts for certain, but I'm a little fortunate in my night shift job that it gives me some time to kind of catch up.
Personally, I've heard it told that most writers write best in the dark, so 3 a.m. may be the perfect time to be writing.
You know what? It does seem to work for me. I find the fact that there's nothing else going on to help me get into, just get my head into that world that I need to be in. I can do it. I've written during the day. I've written in coffee shops during like the busiest times of day. On our weekends, that's what we typically do. There's a university bookstore that we go hang out at and we write. It seems to be a little bit of a stereotype of writers to go write in a coffee shop. It really does work for us. So I can do it during the day. I can tune it all out. But when I'm home at night between like 3 and 6 in the morning, and it's the same for me as anybody else who comes home at 5 o'clock, between 5 and 8. You're glad to be off the job. You've got some downtime for yourself. Well, I have the added luxury of there's nothing else going on. Nobody's out with a jackhammer in my street. The linemen aren't, ripping something off my telephone pole outside the house. I don't have tractor trailers driving by. It makes it much easier to get in, really.
Well, I think it's fantastic. And while I don't write or edit writing or anything like that, I do edit audio. And yeah, it's easier for me to do when the world's quiet.
Sure is.
So are you the type of writer who plots out every point in a book and you know where this story's going from the word one? Or do you let the characters run away with the story?
Everybody's got their different words for that, the plotter or the pantser or whatever. I'm kind of a plotster or something along those lines. My wife, when she writes, she needs to just start with a basic idea and let the characters take her where they're going. I'm a little more anal retentive than that. My time in the military and all, I'm just a little bit more boilerplate than that. I come up with kind of a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a little like a road trip for me. I know I'm going to start in, say, Yuma, Arizona, and I'm going to get to Williamsburg, Virginia, by way of Tulsa, Oklahoma. But where I go in between those points, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And that's kind of my approach to writing. I began with the idea of the beginning and ending. I knew where Karis started. I knew what her problems were. I knew what her challenges were. And I knew where I wanted her to end. In the middle was the great big question of, especially in my original concept of this one large, maybe 800-page book, what's going to happen? Well, I needed a middle point. And having worked in entertainment, in animation, I did a lot of storyboard work for television cartoons, most of them really terrible. I won't even go into some of the titles. It would be disingenuous. But most of them are really bad. But even bad animated shows, or bad TV shows for that matter of any kind, teach you a story structure. So I knew I needed a middle point. Put a little thought into that, came up with one, and of course things change. But with those 3 points kind of set, almost like a Doctor Who set point in time, immovable point in time concept, except maybe not quite so immovable.
Right.
I just started letting my characters lead me through the story, and every once in a while I'd need to knowing where I wanted to go, I had to make a course correction from time to time. But there were several times where in the course of the writing, and that's the creative aspect of it, in the course of the writing, things just happen. Lines come out of characters' mouths that make you go, oh my God, I never saw that coming. And it takes you somewhere else. So I always had to kind of keep in mind where this thing was going. Sometimes I moved that middle point around a little bit, but I always had a little bit of a roadmap. But I took lots of side trips. So basically it's a hybrid process. I never had an outline that I'd have to go back to and, oh my God, I betrayed that. I need to change this and cut that out and rewrite. No, I just changed my midpoint.
Well, I'd actually have to say you're in good company because most of the authors that I speak with are that hybrid variation. They know plot point A, plot point B, plot point C, and plot point D. How they're getting from A to B, B to C, and C to D is anybody's guess.
Yeah, I think it works the best for all of us. I have nothing but the highest regard for the people who can do it with no endpoint, though. Like I mentioned, my wife does that, and I'm just in awe of the ability to do that. I can't. I have to control it a little bit more than that. But there are people out there who can just come up with this stuff, and where it ends is where the characters brought them. I can't do that, though.
Well, as much as I've enjoyed this conversation, unfortunately, as everybody knows, there are bills and everything. And yes, it is time to pay those radio station bills. So, I am going to pour myself a cup of coffee, and I will see you on the other side.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Thank everybody for hanging in there over the commercial break. Yes, I will pour Guy a cup of coffee and we can continue discussing The Forgotten Princess of Mona and his other books. Yes, because he has more than one out. So, Guy.
Yes.
What was your... They say editing is slaying your darlings. What was the one scene or character you had to take out just because it absolutely didn't go anywhere that you hated pulling?
Oh, well, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a spoiler here, I guess. It's not really a spoiler. You already know from listening to my gas bag windiness for the first half of this show that this series of 4 books covers the life of my main character, Karis. So you know that she doesn't die, at least not in any of the first of those 4 books. At one point, though, when she escapes from a very bad situation at the end of The Forgotten Princess of Mona, however, people assume that she has died in the aftermath. And in the second book details Karis's life in the wild with her dragon. She and the dragon are together for most of that book, and it is just them. When I originally wrote it, I included many of the original characters from Forgotten Princess Simona and what was happening to them in the aftermath of the disaster that Karis escaped from and that they all thought she died in. So in part of that, this all wound up getting cut out of the book because the book just got too doggone big, and the story's about Karis, not these other people. So it got sacrificed. But I really loved a scene that I wrote where there's a funeral for Karis. Now, Queen Lucia, who is the new queen of Mona, Karis' stepmother, has a son of her own, ostensibly with Karis' father, King Talarkan, who went missing. Karis and that son, whose name is Alayan, got along really well, even though Karis was simple-minded. So, and Alayan is not simple-minded. He's a perfectly normal little boy, but he's only 5 years old. And he's a little bit of a spoiled being a prince. Well, he is destroyed at the idea that his older sister died. In fact, the thinking is that she was crushed under a wall that fell. So there's just really not much left to bury. But they find some remains and bury them as if they're Karis. And I really, really, really loved the scene because I wrote it from a lion's point of view of this beloved older sister of his that everybody else either really didn't like much because she was weird, and people were very superstitious about mentally handicapped back then. He's really distraught about it, and he gets to be the last person to put a little something into her tomb before they seal it up. And it's wrapped up in a Latin ceremony that the local bishop is putting on. And I really liked it because it just put a lot of emotion into that little boy over something that the reader knows is not the case. And it was one of my favorite things, and just because I wound up having to cut all those characters out of the book for the sake of the book's flow, I killed that little darling, but that was a hard one. I really liked that.
I always love hearing about the scenes that the authors had to cut, that they didn't want to have to cut, but they had to cut because it either didn't move the story forward, made it too long, fill in the blank, they had to go.
Yeah, I could publish another book of excerpts from this because so much of it got cut out in that second book. And that in the third book, when people start going back to that area, that created a little bit of a challenge for me because there's 4 years passing. Eventually, Karis does go back to her home. And for anybody who's read the existing 3 books, the 3 current available books, this is not a spoiler. Those are in the books. And if you haven't read them yet, you're going to forget long before you get to this point, so I'm not worried about it. Karis does go back home under an assumed name. But when she gets there, it's in a situation that is drastically different than the one that she left. So that changed situation was delineated throughout the book A Cold White Home and a little bit of the third book, Songs of Autumn. When I had to cut all that out of Cold White Home, it left me with Karis going back to a situation that now is just, holy God, this doesn't even remotely resemble, other than geographically, where she came from. So it really made kind of a challenge for me in how to get that across, all that stuff that had happened in her absence. It's as much a surprise to the reader as it is to her. And the challenge that presents to me as a writer is not to dump an enormous pile of information in the reader's lap, because there's nothing that'll send the reader checking out of a book faster than a chapter-long info dump.
Yes, ye old info dump. I've seen it. I've read it. Luckily, at my reading speed, I can read right through it.
Yeah, eventually, but
No.
a lot of people won't, and it's the kiss of death for a writer. And I say it was a challenge. It hurt to cut the scenes because I really liked them, but then honestly, in terms of my growth as a writer, it was a good thing because to put that challenge in front of me, how do I do this? I think I did all right. We'll see what everybody thinks when book 4 comes out. But no, there is no dreaded info dump. I managed to find ways to work it in. We'll just see how well people think I did when the book actually comes out, maybe January, February 2018.
Well, for one, I will expect you back on the coffee shop. Lunches are just a blast.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Now, what's your advice for a new writer trying to find their way around a manuscript?
Oh, as in never written one before?
Or never finished one, or struggling with writer's block? Take your pick.
Oh, wow, there's just so many things. I mean, the stereotypical answer to that is always right. And I've given that one plenty of times myself, because it's probably the most valuable advice for any new or upcoming writer is just write all the time. I find that, segueing into the writer's block thing, I find that writer's block almost doesn't really exist. I mean, it does. You sit there and, holy cow, nothing's coming. Well, then just write something else. Anything else. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have anything to do with the story that you planned on writing. Write something. That knocks stuff loose. Once something starts flowing, the ideas are going to come out of your head. You're going to find yourself subliminally putting something down that belongs in that story. A little kickstart method I've found. You might get through a couple of pages before you get to that thing that kind of flips the switch in your head, like, oh my God, this is it. But just write all the time. Beyond that, talk to other writers. Other writers can teach you a huge amount. I wrote the first 4 or 5 drafts of Forgotten Princess of Mona in an utter vacuum. Now, I've always been a big reader. I've been reading. Well, I'm misspeaking myself here. I've been reading novels since I was about 9 years old. I think that's when I read Planet of the Apes, 2001, A Space Odyssey, The Poseidon Adventure, Jaws. Not that my mom and dad knew I was reading that kind of stuff, because Poseidon Adventure and Jaws particularly get pretty smutty in their printed forms. But I've just been reading all the time. Anything I could get my hands on as a kid. I fell into science fiction with 2001 and stayed there. Discovered Tolkien later. Well, all of that's great. I knew what I liked. I could write the way I liked. I'd written plenty of other stuff as a younger kid. I started out, like so many other people, writing fan fiction in the 70s. But I was writing in a vacuum. There was no internet back then in the 70s. And most of us are pretty introverted, and it takes a certain amount of guts to hand stuff over to people and say, hey, I wrote this. Would you like to tell me how god awful it is? Most of us don't do that. Unfortunately, writing in that vacuum doesn't really lead to your growing, and you're just perpetuating mistakes that you don't know you're making. It's when you start talking to other authors, start interacting with an author's group, either in person or online, you're going to start learning stuff that you didn't have any idea you had yet to learn. So that would be the big thing. Write a lot and talk to other writers.
Now, you mentioned writers' groups. Do you have a couple you'd recommend, or places you'd recommend people finding other writers?
I don't have an actual physical one. I live in a part of the country that, let's face it, is not full of the most literary-minded types in the world. The Great Plains is an awesome place to live. It really is, and it's got some fantastic people living in it. Not a lot, especially if you tell them that you're into fantasy and science fiction, there's probably going to be a lot of vacant looks thrown your way. So no, personally, I don't have one available to me in the area that I live, but online there are several of them. There is, and I'm speaking mostly from science fiction and fantasy because that's what I write. Obviously, there are plenty of others that don't deal in those genres. But online on Facebook, I would recommend the Sci-Fi Roundtable. Is a really good one. It's got a ton of membership. It's got a ton of people taking part in it. It's not just like 4 or 5 people, spouting their minds and everybody else falls in line and just says, yes, 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 we love that too. It's very big membership and it's very active membership. There is a much smaller one that I'm part of. I hesitate to say I was part of the founding of it, but I was one of the first people in it, called Dreamtime Tales Fantasy. It's created and moderated by a fellow self-published author over in Great Britain by the name of Niels Visser. I'd recommend that one. There are quite a few good ones out there. If you search for sci-fi or fantasy writers groups, you'll find quite a few. And those two are the ones I would recommend the most, I think.
Outstanding. Now, how did your drawing impact your writing? Do you see the scenes as pictures in your head?
Oh, absolutely. I see it in terms of, for an ex-animator, I don't see it in terms of animation, although animation now is approaching live action in terms of its imagery anyway. But absolutely, I see it play out in my head like a movie, because that's what I used to do. I used to storyboard and animate TV shows and movies. I hear the music in my head. I've got a soundtrack playing back there. And of course, if I could plug my brain into a set of speakers, you probably would hear utter mush. But to me, in my brain, it all is playing like a movie back there. So, and I've been told that I write cinematically. I suppose probably most writers do now, though, honestly, because of the prevalence of filmed entertainment. Everybody's grown up on television and watching movies. We all are familiar with the visual way of telling stories. So I think all writers tend to do that now, but absolutely, in my brain, it is in 70 millimeter Technicolor with the greatest CG effects ever.
So you mentioned your wife is also a writer. Does she help you edit your manuscript, or does she look at your writing, or do you not go back and forth with that like that with each other?
Oh, she's one of my beta readers, and in fact, when I've come up on some story points where I'm either torn, and I've got several different ways I can go, and I'm in love with every single one of those ideas. She's been pretty indispensable about kind of pointing out to me, yeah, I know you like that, I know you like this, I know you like that, but as an outside eye, she's like, this one here, that's the way to go. And I think once I did not take her advice and was happy with what I did. The other times, not so much. I should have taken her advice.
Oh, just goes to show, you never know what the wife knows.
Now, she's a very good storyteller herself. Her thing coming from editorial is different, of course, because you're assembling what's given to you at that point. But that's part of the reason why she's a very good beta reader for me, is that I'm basically, she's fallen back on that old habit of editorial. Here's the quote-unquote footage. What do you think works best? And like any good editor, she'll point out that one right there. And like I say, once I did not listen to her and was happy with the result. And all the other times it's just been like, yeah, she's right.
So how long did it take you how long do you think it's going to take for you to edit this 4th book and get it out there for the rest of the world to read?
Oh, it has been probably the biggest job I've had in this entire series. I threw so many things into it, like several kitchen sinks went into this original draft of the final book, and it's got to get whittled down a lot. There are just a lot of things. I was giving myself avenues of approaches, which way to go, which way I can go, which way I might go, several different versions of scenes and endings, and leaving the decision later which one was going to work best with my eventual ending. A lot of stuff needs whittling down at that point. I'm hoping for January or February 2018, maybe. And we'll see. We'll see. I guess the beautiful thing about being self-published and not having a major publishing house hounding me about a release date and advance they paid me and blah blah blah. It's up to me. The thing will come out when I'm done with it. But it's the ending. I have not a great deal of fans, mind you. I'm certainly no Stephen King, but there's a few people out there that are asking me relatively often, hey, when's that last one out? Come on, I've already read the first 3. Hopefully January, February 2018. Short answer.
Well, like I've already mentioned, you will be welcome back in the coffee shop. And at this point in the time in every episode of Coffee Shop, I have 2 questions left.
Okay.
What is your favorite coffee shop treat?
Oh, favorite coffee shop treat. Apple fritters.
Awesome. And would you please share your social media contact information?
Oh, absolutely. I can be found at my Dragon's Treasure Facebook page that's dedicated to the series. And basically, if you just go onto Facebook and search The Dragon's Treasure, it will pop up.
All right. Well, I thank you for joining me in the coffee shop. And as a reminder to all my listeners, yes, Jesse's Coffee Shop is not only available online, you can play it from the device in your pocket. Yes, it is also a podcast available on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and many of your favorite podcast locations. And I can be found on Twitter at Jesse's POV. You can email me at the station, Jessie, Jessie, at klrnradio.com. And, of course, you can always check out the latest Coffee Shop episodes at jessiescoffeeshop.com. And on that note, I'm snatching these 3 books in the Dragon's Treasure series off the table, pour myself another cup of coffee, and settle down for a great read. And I will see you folks next time in the coffee shop.
Come in store and you'll also get a 10-day sample of Double Wear Longwear Foundation in your perfect shade. Quantities are limited, so don't miss the Estee Lauder free gift. Now through August 23rd at Dillard's and Dillards.com.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
The thought of my sons growing up without me inspired me to quit smoking.
I talked to my doctors, and then I threw away all my cigarettes, ashtrays, and lighters.
I started exercising instead of smoking.
Getting support from friends online kept me on track.
Staying away from alcohol when I was first quitting was key.
Instead of smoking after I ate, I'd get up and take a walk.
I missed having a cigarette in my hand, so I'd hold a pen or a straw, anything.
Until I knew I wouldn't give in to temptation, I spent more time with my friends who didn't smoke.
I went to places that were smoke-free.
I didn't stay quit the very first time I tried.
I kept on trying, and I learned something each time.
Do whatever it takes.
No matter how many times it takes.
I quit.
I quit.
I quit.
We did it, so can you.
You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CDC.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
As a mother, you don't want to have to worry about this bill is coming, but then she needs this chemo. That's a decision you shouldn't have to make.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
The treatment doesn't get any better than what you receive at St. Jude. It saved my life. It saved my daughter's life. It saved our family.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.